ask you, how serious are these protests getting? Is President Omar al-Bashir in any danger of being pushed out?
I think he is, yes. So something that sets these protests apart from previous protests, of which there have been any number over the years, is that they appear to be drawn, the protesters appear to be drawn from all sectors of Sudanese society. So it's a much broader, more widespread representation of Sudanese population who are protesting. Of course, the protests started as protests against the elimination of subsidies for bread and petrol and other goods such as that. But it's become about, it appears to become now about Omar al-Bashir himself and people calling for him to go. So whether the protest...
He's been there for decades. Why would you say this is the most serious challenge?
Well, yeah, he's been there for almost 3 decades, so he is adept at maintaining power. There's no doubt about that. But again, just the scale and the breadth of these protests suggests that Bashir may well be in trouble. The other thing to watch here is that whether there is a challenge that comes from within his own party for people who think that Bashir is vulnerable and think that in order to preserve the revolution that they believe they're leading, that he has to go. So I think he's facing danger on a number of fronts. One is obviously the street protests, which could force him out, but also he might get forced out by members of his own party if they believe he cannot hold the regime together.
If he were to go, what kind of a transformation would we see in Sudan, if any?
It really depends what comes after, of course. So there are people, civil society organizations, intellectuals, people of that nature in Sudan who have been thinking about a post-Bashir Sudan for many years. And they have a fairly good grasp of what they hope for it to be and what they envision it to be. Now, whether those reformers can grasp the upper hand in a potential transition away from Bashir is an open question, because if Bashir is simply replaced by other hardliners from within his party, then there won't be much change at all, sadly.
If you were to pull out from the country and even from the region, which of the big players around the world are watching events most closely in Sudan and planning for some alternative scenario?
Well, Sudan is an important country. It's very large. It's strategically located on the Red Sea. So a lot of countries are watching this very closely. Of course, regional countries, neighbors are very concerned about any sort of chaos and the ripple effects that could have into the region. But globally, the United States is watching very carefully, of course. The Arab states who have big investments in Sudan are watching quite closely. Turkey is watching quite closely, which is engaged with Sudan on any number of levels. So it's drawing a lot of attention, and I think that I'm sure there are efforts have been made to reach out to the Bashir regime and try to facilitate and mediate or offer mediation services to try to bring some calm and some sort of resolution.